Well, while we're getting settled, I'd like to ask you from the last week, just as a slight, small refresher, we were talking about acceptance as the pillar of joy of acceptance, starting to move into, and we finished the four kind of connected to the mind. Again, perspective, humility, humor, and acceptance, those four pillars. And now we're moving into the heart. Okay, so we're going to look at forgiveness. And I like to link acceptance and forgiveness a lot in my practice because it's hard to forgive until we're able to accept. And we tend to not forgive when there's things we're not accepting about ourselves. The less accepting we are about some aspects of ourselves, then when they are mirrored outside of us in other people, we're less accepting. And as a result of that, we have an inability to forgive. So I find them very connected like that. So I'm just curious this week, what kind of ripples were going out? And remember that, and also remember the bumpy axle we talked about of suffering, of dukkha, of suffering. Was your ride bumpy this week? Was it smooth? And if it got bumpy, what kind of ripples were going out from you? Were you sending out? Were they pretty peaceful, joyous, or something else? I'm just kind of curious how you rolled with things and how flexibility was working. Any comments you'd like to add, please? Mary, please.
I have one. It was about when you said that the joy can be contagious and to let somebody know you're thinking about them. And I have a very dear aunt who is in the hospital again, and she's 85. And I call her 2 or 3 times a day, ask her what she's having for dinner and breakfast. And if I miss a mealtime check-in, she calls my mom and wonders if everything's okay, but she just looks forward to it. And so now I've got my brother also calling her and it just there's something really joyful about that. And so spreading that ripple, it just the words last week when you said to let somebody know you're thinking about them was really powerful.
Yes, wonderful. Very, very helpful. That's very helpful. Very nice. Anybody thinking about it this week or working with it? Or did we forget? It's very common. We forget sometimes, right? Excuse me 1 second. Sorry, oddly enough, somebody is interesting. Okay, so any other comments, please? What you're working with this week? How did your week go? Pretty peaceful? Otherwise? Patricia?
My week was pretty peaceful, but I have to say I didn't meet, or I wasn't here last Tuesday, so I missed that class. But TNL is helping so much. I do a practice every single day, and that is why I am so strong right now and resilient, and I just feel very good. And I'm very involved in the AA program and attend daily meetings, and all of that has just brought me to a very peaceful place. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so let's talk about forgiveness, and let's first, again, now that we're here, settle into our motivation. Let's just think about that motivation or rekindle it if you've set it up earlier this morning. And again, we're very focused. We're talking about joy, pillars of joy, how to transform your mind into something more joyous. really for the purpose of benefiting all living beings. And the best way that we can benefit all living beings is if we're enlightened, because then we have no limits on how we can best serve all living beings. So just take a moment to close your eyes. Just deepen your respiration for a moment. And think about that Mahayana motivation of benefiting all living beings and reaching that fully awakened state in order to do so. And if that's something that interests you, please roll that into your motivation for our time together and all the activities of the rest of your day. So really for the purpose of benefiting all living beings, let's talk about the pillar of forgiveness, and we'll talk about some other things from last week. What I'd like to talk about is how chronic stress, and we mentioned a little bit last week, stress can be caused a lot due to expectations and ambition. Okay, so you can look at that in your own life, how it operates. But symptoms of chronic stress, as we know, are feelings of fragmentation and chasing after time. Chasing after time. Now, some of you may be retired, right? So you've got a little bit more leisure, but I'm amazed how some retired people I know, it's just endless. And it's really interesting in my life because I used to run Dharma centers, and it's fraught, and it's just, you don't have a moment. You barely have a moment. And so not running a Dharma center now, I'm kind of thinking, how did I fit that in? Because I'm so busy right now. Like, it's amazing how, I mean, it's part of my nature, but there's just so many worthwhile activities I'm involved with. So it's kind of like chasing after time of not, and because of it, are you really able to be present? Think about how present you are. Or is the mind flitting off after, oh, another thing I've got to do later. Oh, I have to do that thing this week. We've got to get that, and I've missed right now. And sometimes the more placement I put with my mind on the present, the more I can be here now, to quote Ram Dass's famous book. Right? It actually helps me to focus better now, which then lends to my getting more done if it's about getting things done. So to start cultivating that presence as much as you can, practice that as well, which is part of our Shine meditation. Shine, calm abiding. It's about placement meditation. We do two fundamental meditations in this tradition of Buddhism: placement and analytical, or stabilizing meditation. Placement, Shine, they're all the same. And that helps you to focus better, to be here in the present, to watch the wandering mind and to keep it present. So what we're looking for to cultivate more joy is a settled, joyful state of being, okay? And you need to give this state some space. You need to give it space, which is why we really meditate. You know, why I have to meditate every day. Because to support a busy life, right, the meditation gives me space in the busyness so that it's not fraught, that it's not overly fraught. You know, and at times if it's starting to get accelerating, I have the ability to focus on that and say, wait a minute, everything's okay. Okay, these are some big tasks ahead of me. What do I need to do? What's most important? And I can quickly prioritize. The space is there. Take a deep breath and off you go, like that. And then to quote Martin Luther King Jr., and this is a famous quote a lot of us have heard over and over again, okay? And talking about, this is related to, on another note, when you're dealing with the atrocities of the world, a lot of people ask me, you know, how are you dealing? What about the pandemic? What about the economy? What about the spread of the variants? And what about this? And what about, are the centers going to open? I mean, all these, you know, what about poor people? And what about the shooting in Colorado now? And what about, you know, there's always going to be something in samsara, some atrocity. That's samsara's nature. Okay. So again, what can you do to help change the situation? And you assess, what can I do? I've already discussed some of this. You can write letters to your congressional representatives. You can make phone calls to them. You can send them email. You can go to marches with a good motivation, right? You can be compassionate with your neighbors and when you're in the grocery store and when you drive. These are things we can affect. These are things we can participate in, okay? And then sometimes I come up against something and I go, wow, another mass shooting. How horrible. I think it's horrible. I think it's an atrocity for me is that my government refuses to set decent gun laws. That's horrifying for me. You know, no matter how many children get shot, they just refuse to kind of see it and to take any action. What can I do about it? I've contacted all my legislators about it, written letters about it, gone to marches about it, you know, again, motivated with something positive, not with hatred and anger and division, positively taking myself into that space, doing what I can. And sometimes things don't change. It's samsara. I let go and I just continue moving forward. Okay. So you might not be able to do a great deal, but you start where you are. You start and you do what you can. Okay. And you know what? It's okay to be appalled. It's okay to be appalled by it. Okay. Okay. But I'm not going to let it cause me to be completely tilted and off center. Still going to keep doing the work I'm doing, like that. So Martin Luther King, again, his famous quote from one of his heroes, an abolitionist minister, Theodore Parker, okay, who said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It bends towards justice. So this is how we start moving out of from acceptance to forgiveness, realizing that. Now, here's the thing to bring in Buddhism. There's karma. So I hear people say, it's not fair. It's not fair. You need to get back at that person. She wronged you. He hurt you. You know, again, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. For me, relates to karma. There's karma. Somebody does something really awful, right? And I do what I can to participate in whatever I feel I can do about it. And then what I can't do, I let go. And I know that those karmic seeds are planted for that person. In a sense, like divine justice. I'm not wishing it for them. I'm not saying, oh, they're going to suffer. Isn't that great? No, it helps me generate more compassion for them because they're so lost, because they're so confused to do something horrid and harm a lot of people like that. When legislators aren't working together, when they make mistakes and try to block different legislation that would really benefit people, what can you do? You call up, you vote, you do your various things, right? And I try to generate compassion. I have a habit of trying to generate compassion. after years of practice. Okay, it's not like I've perfected anything. Okay, but that's what we work on rather than, and this is opposes hatred, opposes divisiveness and fractiousness. It opposes that. So you keep working on that, practicing that, so that my response is how, Colorado shooting, another shooting, but I'm not just about the people who died. Think of the shooter. Think of the mindset that wants to shoot a lot of people. How can you not have compassion? How can you not have compassion for the person who is so lost and confused, right? But you have to practice it. Initially, it's like, oh, horrible person. And we're brainwashed to think that way. This person's disturbed. This person should be gassed. There should be a death penalty. Like that's what major news outlets will tell you. Don't watch them, don't pay attention. Minimize that kind of influence. What does the Dharma say? This is a mother sentient being. In some life, they were your mother. In some life, due to the stream of consciousness that has no beginning or end, they were your mother. Think of the kindness they showered on you. So meditating continually on bodhicitta, right? And then you meditate on emptiness enough, slowly, right? And even before you have a direct perception of emptiness, when you start to get a sense of the lack of concrete nature, the lack of inherent nature of yourself, of others, of everything, that it lacks any concrete evilness. The person who shot people lacks any concrete horror like that, right? But because we don't realize emptiness, we're all lost. We all get it wrong. We all get it wrong. We're like children in the sandbox often, right? And with children in the sandbox, when they do something wrong, when they think something wrong or act, we have compassion because they don't know better. They don't know any better, right? We have compassion. That's just like everybody that doesn't have a direct perception of emptiness. Okay? That's everybody that doesn't have a direct perception of emptiness, doesn't know any better. How can you not have compassion? Are we communicating? So you need to roll this into your life. Please roll this into your life. It's really, really important for us to start transforming our minds into something more peaceful and joyful. So with the atrocities, you stay balanced. You continue to do positive work. You continue to think positively. You continue to be the ray of light that the planet needs so desperately right now, right? And I hear people railing against this and railing against that. I don't want to be a railer. I have strong opinions, absolutely. I have very strong opinions like that. And it's okay to voice the opinions now and then make sure it's not so heavy and you're really projecting onto somebody, some big trip of yours like that. Okay, so this is Archbishop Desmond Tutu on hope versus optimism. I say to people, this is him, I say to people, I'm not an optimist, because that in a sense is something that depends on feelings more than actual reality. We feel optimistic or we feel pessimistic. He says, now hope is different in that it's based not on ephemerality of feelings, but on the firm ground of conviction. He says, I believe with a steadfast faith that there can never be a situation that is utterly, totally hopeless. Hope is deeper and very close to unshakable. It's the pit of your tummy. It's not in your head. It's all here. He means pointing to his stomach. Despair comes from deep grief, but can also be a defense against the risks of bitter disappointment and shattering heartbreak. Resignation and cynicism are easier, more self-soothing postures that don't require raw vulnerability and the tragic risk of hope. Okay, so to choose hope is to step firmly forward into the howling wind baring one's chest to the elements, knowing that in time the storm will pass. Again, it's same like Martin Luther King. It bends towards justice. It bends towards justice. There's nothing utterly, totally hopeless. Because everything lacks inherent hopelessness. Very similarly related to the Dharma. So, and His Holiness will say, never give up. Never give up. Because you can reach that fully awakened state. You can become a Buddha. Okay. And then you personally are free of all the suffering, and you're experiencing and merged with every moment infinite bliss, infinite peace. And then you get to share that and help others get to that space. Amazing, right? Amazing. Okay. Let's talk about a little bit more about forgiveness. There's books written on forgiveness, as you know. One famous one from Archbishop Desmond Tutu, he wrote it with his daughter. I think it's called the Book of Forgiving, and it's great. It's really great. There's exercises in there. If you have an issue, something that you are holding like a rock in your heart, read that book and do the exercises. He talks about a fourfold path of forgiveness. It's a very, very helpful book like that. Forgiveness. This is from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Where the wrong action is concerned, it may be necessary to take appropriate counteraction to stop it. Okay, toward the actor or the person, however, you can choose not to develop anger and hatred. This is where the power of forgiveness lies, not losing sight of the humanity of the person, okay, while responding to the wrong with clarity and firmness. Okay, so for people, when people ask me, oh, if I practice bodhicitta, I'm going to be a doormat, or I'm afraid somebody's going to take advantage of me or use me, or things like that, or this person really harmed me and they're a family member and I'm not sure, like, do I cut them out of my life or how do I relate to them? So again, don't lose sight of the humanity of the person. And with Buddhism, they have at one point, according to bodhicitta teachings, been your mother in one life or another and showed you immense kindness and care. So you need more meditation on bodhicitta to realize that continuum of consciousness does involve a belief in reincarnation. And before this life, there was another life. And before that life, there was another life. And before that one, and the one before that, and the one before that, and the one before that, there was a mother. Okay, unless you were in hell realms, okay? There was a mother who showed you immense kindness, who cared for you over and over. When we think of all these beings, there's a link of humanity. Again, humanity coming from the same word as humor and humility, from the earth. We are all connected in that way. Let's not lose sight of the lost person that harms you, okay? However, it's very powerful to set boundaries. And if they're abusive, you absolutely need to set boundaries, and that's very beneficial. So again, His Holiness says, responding to the wrong with clarity and firmness. And I would add, with a good motivation, but I think His Holiness is assuming that. To go on, His Holiness says, we stand firm against the wrong, not only to protect those who are being harmed, okay, but get this one, also to protect the person who's harming others. Because eventually, due to karma, they will suffer. We know that. They will suffer. So it's out of a sense of concern for their own long-term well-being that we want to stop their wrongdoing. Did you ever think of that? We're so concerned with, oh, they're harming me. They're interfering with my agenda. I don't really like them in my space. This person's so annoying. That's what we think of how it affects me, okay? But what about them? What if they continue to go on this way? Now, we can't change them. It's not about that. But if I kind of say, this is enough, I'm only available for this much, that's the best we can do. And that we we cut it off, and then they're less kind of haranguing like that. Okay, out of my concern for them. Out of my concern for them. Forgiveness, Archbishop Desmond Tutu adds, is the only way to heal ourselves and to be free from the past that holds you hostage, I'll say. So again, he and his daughter in the Book of Forgiving, they say, without forgiveness, we think about this, we remain tethered to the person who harmed us. We're bound to the chains of bitterness, tied together and trapped. Until we can forgive the person who harmed us, that person holds the keys to our happiness. That person is your jailer. When we forgive, we take back control of our own fate and feelings. We become our own liberator. So think about, and I know there's been some extremely serious abuse people have suffered, tremendous abuse people have suffered at the hands of loved ones, okay? Let alone at the hands of others. And some people have had a very hard time forgiving, very hard time to see past. Buddhism can be so helpful this way with teachings on bodhicitta and the 7-point cause and effect method to meditate on bodhicitta through Tonglen practice, like that. And also, I want to do a short meditation right now on dealing with a difficult person. Dealing with a difficult person. Can I just ask, we haven't done that meditation in this course, I don't think. Have we? Does anybody remember? Okay, I don't think we have. That's what I thought. It's dealing with a difficult person. We're going to do this briefly. Usually it takes a little longer, but I just want to do briefly because we hold these people out there and they are forever evil, difficult, on and on. So let's sit comfortably. And as you're settling into a meditation posture, and this is the important part about the posture. The important part of setting up a proper meditation practice is to relax. Take a few deep breaths. Those inhalations, again, are bringing space into any tension you're holding in your body. The deeper exhalations are allowing you to release the tension. I'd like you to choose right now one challenging person in your life. Better to have someone that you know personally rather than a world figure. Somebody you may find irritating or annoying. Just choose one person. Place them in the space in front of you, facing you, as if they're really there. As you look across at this person now, in the space in front, I'd like you to just first notice the feelings in your body and mind that arise in relation to this person. And there's no big judgment about the feelings. I just want you to observe. Can you recall a recent or the last time you had an irritating interaction with them? Just call that up in your mind. Play a few bars of it, meaning push a button as if it's rolling like a video of that irritating interaction. Okay, push the stop button on the recording. Let's check. What was your motivation in this interaction? And did you accomplish it? Okay, here's a big stretch now. What do you think their motivation was in the interaction? And did you ever consider that? Now, you may not know their mind, but we may have imputed a motivation on them. Are you really sure that it's accurate? What else are you imputing on this person across from you? What else are you labeling on them? Solidifying about them? And how much do you know about this person? They may be a family member very close to you, and you think you know everything about them. Do you know the inner workings of their mind? Did you ever think about their insecurities, their limitations, their confusion, how unhappy they really are? If it's a coworker or someone in your community that you don't know as personally, do you know that they have a sick child? That they're having financial trouble? That they hate their job? That they hate where they live? That they're having relationship problems? Now look across at this person. What we're really focused on is ourselves. They have interfered with our agenda. They have caused a cloud to cross my horizon. It's all about me, myself, and I. Let's step into their shoes for a moment. We have the wonderful saying in our culture, put yourself in someone else's shoes. Just be them for a moment. Look out through their eyes back at you right now. Back at you, irritated and annoyed. Fun. Fun, isn't it? To be them, looking back at you annoyed. Very uncomfortable as well. So now return back to yourself looking across at the person. Just notice anything that may have changed in your view of them. And according to emptiness, the nature of reality, there's no inherently concrete, irritating person there at all. Because what that indicates, what that means, is everyone would have to experience them that way. Everyone. As if they're frozen in time and space. Inherently difficult. Does everybody have that experience of them? Is that how their closest friend experiences them? So coming back to you facing this person, before we let them go back into the space, feel free to acknowledge them in any way you like for being here as part of this exercise. And slowly allow them to dissolve back into the space from where they came. And slowly, when you're ready, open your eyes. It's a really powerful meditation that is really helpful to do over and over again if you're very challenged by somebody. These meditations are designed to be done over and over until you're really getting a sense of that person dissolving as challenging, and you're able to create more compassion in your heart towards them. Like that. Any questions right now? Okay. So I want to talk a little bit more about forgiveness. I just want to find, I have some notes on, let me just see if I can find my notes from the Book of Forgiving that I wanted to add in. Forgot to get those ready. One thing I wanted to mention. I know it's here. See if I can find it quickly.
Venerable Amy,
Yes.
I just wanted to mention that I tried that meditation on myself because I'm extremely hard on myself, and
Okay.
it really helps. It creates that space. You know, I'm an overachiever, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it really helps. But thank you so much.
Sure, absolutely. That's interesting to do on yourself. Sometimes we need to do it with ourself. Absolutely. I find sometimes one to do with yourself that can work a bit better than, you know, finding yourself so difficult is loving kindness with yourself. So you have you across from yourself, loving kindness and Tonglen, I find really beneficial to do more with yourself than the difficult person one. But you're in front of yourself, looking at yourself, and you can feel all those negative feelings that come up sometimes. Hurt and pain and driving yourself and pushing and squeezing and, and it's never good enough. And, all, whatever it is, we all have different recordings, right? And then generating colors coming out. So from your heart center, what you can do is move yourself to the side and take a person you really love, somebody you adore, right? And as soon as you see that person, like feel that love coming from your heart and let it radiate as colors. And first it radiates through your body, warming energy of just delightful. And then it streams out of your heart across to them, completely entering their heart, but enveloping them with loving kindness. Well, that's easy to do with the person you adore. Like it generates automatically, pretty easy to get going. Okay. Then you do that for them for a while, for a little bit. Okay. Slowly let it stop. Okay. And move that person to the side and bring yourself to the center focus. And so initially those feelings stop for some people. It's like, whoa, I can't. And we have a thing that we're not allowed to generate loving kindness for ourselves. Somehow that's creates egomania. No, not at all. It creates balanced well-being to care for yourself. Okay. So we just had that experience with someone else. Now realize, well, I am good enough. I'm trying my best because that's all you can do. That's all you can do. So slowly, let me just try to let those rays radiate. And it's okay to observe that they're a little bit stuck. Okay. So maybe keep them going to the person next to you. Let them continue to fly out there, generate out, radiate out. And then a little bit's coming over to me, and slowly you keep working on that to be able to generate the loving kindness, and think about how much you need it if you're unable to generate it towards yourself. And you can send wishes to yourself as well, wishes like that. We'll do this meditation next week before we close. Wishes like, may you be happy. May you be healthy. Wishes like that. Why wouldn't you wish that to yourself? Because if you are happy, if you are healthy and peaceful, right, you're going to be such a better being to generate that on the planet. And our planet needs that. Our planet needs you to be there. So I found that really helpful, as well as with Tonglen meditation, the taking and giving meditation is very profound, part of bodhicitta teachings as well. You put yourself in front, you start with yourself. Most people are like, all living beings. That's too hard to think of taking their suffering and offering them happiness to begin with. I begin with myself, cross from myself, and I think about how I suffer, my pain, things like that. And then I imagine as I inhale, I take on that pain and suffering. Doesn't harm me seated here in the room. It harms and not a self-cherishing at my heart. And because I minimize that self-cherishing, I diminish it. That's the only thing that keeps me from being really happy. Now I have more peace, generosity, happy things to share with that front visualization of myself. And when I exhale, that's what I send out. All my happiness, love, all the goodness that's being generated. And you just keep that with the circular breathing. Taking the suffering, let it reduce my self-cherishing, offering the happiness. So that might be helpful too. Can try.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very welcome. Let me just have a quick thing before I know I'm going to find this. And if not, I have one other place I'm going to, because I took very good notes. Okay, let me look in my other, because I know I read this book a long time ago. Sorry about this.
And Barbara has a question.
Okay. Okay, let me just look in one last little thing, and I'm going to see if I can just find this. I'll look for it for next week. Let me just see if I've got it here. Okay, Barbara, please.
The question that I have, it's regarding the shooter in Colorado and the one in Atlanta, in all of them. But the most recent one, I really tried on with the shooter, compassion, forgiveness, knowing that he will suffer. But yet part of me, I feel like I have two camps. I have the shooter camp and I have the 10 people that were killed in their families. And I feel by having compassion for the shooter, it's such a disservice to the families who are
Okay.
hurting so greatly.
Sure.
I don't know any of them, but I know that I have two camps and I want to meld everybody into one camp so I don't feel like I'm, I don't know, doing a disservice to these grieving families.
Okay, absolutely. I think a lot of us feel the two camps with you. I don't think you're alone. Thank you. It's a great question. I think what I would do is what happens is we think, and we've been taught for years, we have been taught for years. In fact, we haven't really been taught about compassion in everyday life. Buddhism, really the essence of most religions teaches you about compassion. But most people I know are not religious, you know? So the essence of religions teaches you, not the way it's sometimes played out with, you know, by people when they get a hold of religion, but the essence of religions. What was Jesus teaching? Compassion. Oh, please. All about compassion. Buddhism's all about compassion. Okay. So we have to reframe and retrain our minds to get the compassion in, because with compassion, you are helping everybody, including the families that are suffering. But the regular world doesn't see that. They're like, you've got to get the shooter, and they're awful. And I don't think of the shooter experiencing the result of that karma happily. Like, I don't go, I know they're going to suffer. Great. No, I'm like, wow, are they going to suffer for that? That is overwhelming. That's overwhelming, because look at the suffering they cause. Look at the fear and the suffering and the horror they've caused for these people and these families and the rest of the country, the people that live around there. Like, I had a whole bunch of friends that had to pop on to Facebook. There were these notifications of I'm safe, that live around there, that live down the street from the store. So there's anxiety in the neighborhood. Of course, there's anxiety. And so, and in Florida, the same. So again, what we have to retrain ourselves is to realize compassion is what helps everybody. Compassion is what helps everybody. So it's okay to acknowledge you're still struggling. Like, am I doing them a disservice? I would say Buddhism's answer would say absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, you're doing the healing process. You're doing the healing process. It's healing in your mind only. It's not healing them. It's healing in your mind to be able to better embrace all mother sentient beings with their pain, their horror, their ignorance, their confusion, their hatred, their fear. We have to embrace all of it to become a Buddha. Does that make sense, Barbara?
It makes a lot of sense. That really helps a lot.
I mean, that's what
By
gets
by
us
also
through.
thinking that in some way, shape, or form, that is compassion for those families.
I really think that because that's the ripple that goes out. If I start holding the shooter as separate and hating them, first of all, it holds me hostage with hatred. I'm locked into hatred. And where the shooting comes from, it comes from hatred. It comes from confusion and
Yep,
concretization.
yep.
So I'm not benefiting anybody by holding on to that. Like that's, we have to keep refreshing that in our minds because again, somebody shoots and you go, oh, what's wrong with that person? You know? And then when you read about their backgrounds, they're all lost. These poor young white guys, most of them are poor young white guys, right? And when you read their histories, their mental illness and loss and no family structure and no education and, you know, hopeless despair is where it comes from. Loneliness and despair. And then I think, how can I not have compassion? My goodness. You know, my goodness. I mean, I meet with a lot of people individually, whether it's Zoom or they were coming over to the house before the pandemic, some people, and I just hear people's stories and my heart goes, you know, these are good people and I label them good, right? But some of them are really lost and in pain and some mental imbalances and my heart goes out to them. You know, I just want to embrace them and be there, be, you know, somebody there for them, like to let them talk about it. So think about these people that have no dharma, no grounding, and because it's so easy to get a gun in America. See, if we could institute better gun laws, it would all be, a lot of it would be different. A lot of it would be different in countries where there are no guns and there's knives. It's extremely different. It's very, very different. There's statistics on it. One of my favorite posters ever years ago, I worked for this congressman who was all about gun control years ago. Behind his desk was a big poster. In the days we had posters, now they're not as popular, but the poster was an American flag waving in the back. You could see kind of the ripples from the wind. And on it, it had every civilized country, Western countries, how many this is just handguns, how many handgun deaths there were in, I think, the year 1986. You know, Sweden, 3 handgun deaths. Japan, you know, 10. Or, you know, it was all really, really low numbers. It had all these countries, England, France, Germany, like what, you know, it just listed, bing, 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 bing. At the bottom was the United States. And I don't remember the number, but I'm going to say the United States in 1986, 36,000 handgun deaths. I mean, dramatic, like staggering number. And then the bottom in very big letters, it said, God bless America. Right? So that's our country. And, you know, because of that amendment, which was constituted at an extremely different time in our country's history, and I'm not talking about hunting rifles, okay? People feel threatened that they can't have a gun. We've seen the damage. We've seen the damage with cigarettes, with smoking tobacco. So we have made laws and we have limited how you can smoke and who's able to smoke legally, blah, blah, blah. There's taxes imposed, whatever, because we see the harm that it causes our medical system from smokers and all their associated illnesses. It doesn't work, it's harmful, right? We saw what happened with car crashes. How many people died in car crashes before seatbelts? Many, many, many people, right? As cars increased in speed and roadways improved, many people were dying. I remember just my community alone, how many horrible car accidents there were, right? So they're like, we need to make seatbelts a law. Well, that seems to save lives. Now it's a law, I think in every state, for the most part. And it saves lives, there's no question. They make a law. Handguns, God forbid. That's America, that's the country, that's the karma of the country we live in. So as a result, And there's other weapons that come in, and it's easy for people mentally unbalanced to snap your fingers, walk into a store and get a gun. That, I find that a problem. So that's just the karma that we've got. So you can write your legislators, go to marches, things like that. Give money to the groups again, you know, for gun control can be helpful. And we practice Dharma because that's really what changes people's minds. That. Okay, so I will try to find my notes on, because what I remember, and I want to bring this in just before we close, the 4-part method of forgiveness from Archbishop Desmond Tutu in the Book of Forgiving. The beginning is to tell your story, to a conscious, cooperative audience. So if you can tell it to the person that harmed you, your abuser, you know, very helpful if they're open to hearing it. This is what they did with the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions in South Africa when they ended apartheid. Fortunately, Nelson Mandela and his people decided, instead of, you know, the whites were afraid they were going to be slaughtered based on what they did to the Black African population. Okay. And he said, no, 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 we need to discuss it. We need to talk about it, but we need to forgive. It's the only way forward. And it was really the only way forward. Things are not perfect in the Republic of South Africa, but apartheid is done. It's much better. So you first tell your story to the person in all its horrible nightmare. If you have that active audience, and you must do it in a safe container. So maybe there's witnesses that are with you that you feel safe with, that you can tell your story. If you cannot tell your story to the abuser or the abuser's passed away, you can do it in a meditation, or tell your story to somebody who is an active listener, compassionate listener to your story. That's number one, you tell your story, okay? And talk about how it's affected you. How has it affected you? Like that, okay? And then you choose to forgive. You choose to forgive the person, okay? This is the hard part, to choose to forgive, but I have done my story. If you don't choose to forgive, think about the ramifications, because the story is always going to hold you hostage. That person will hold you hostage. I'm not releasing them. I'm not going to release them. Some people are identified as victims. That's their identity. They need to be a victim. I know people like that. Serves them. They were raped. They were this, they were that. And that's what, you know, their child died. And forever and all time, that's all they are. You can move past that and always remember that your child died and grieve, and move past the grief at some point and help other people whose children have died. Okay. So then big act of forgiveness. I am going to let it go and feel some compassion for this person, open my heart. Okay. Another step is you get to choose to continue the relationship with the person you're forgiving, or you can let the relationship go. Yep. And that's okay. That's okay. So we'll talk more about this next week. But the interesting thing with forgiveness is, don't be surprised. This is a process. Please don't be surprised if you wake up the next morning. You really did the exercise well. You wake up the next morning and you have to forgive again. It's a process to soften and open the heart, okay? And let what you're grappling with and what you had concretized go, and let it melt. Some things take time. So be patient. Be patient. So I'd like to, in closing, I'd like to dedicate whatever positive energy or merit we have created from doing this practice together, okay, to us being able to implement more forgiveness in our hearts and minds, being kinder and gentler also to ourselves, that will enable us to be kinder and gentler to others, particularly the difficult person, so that, and may we roll it into our practice to become fully enlightened, so we can be of the most benefit to all living beings. And I'd like to dedicate to all those suffering from COVID to be healed immediately, and from other diseases, and from those who've recently passed away to never take rebirth in lower realms, and quickly take a good rebirth to get enlightened to benefit all living beings and for the long lives of our precious teachers. Thank you to Tutu Norbeling and both Marys. Thank you so much. And they've just posted where there's some additional courses. And there's the Book of Forgiving link. Thank you so much, Mary. And I look forward to seeing you soon. I do have a course this evening at 7. You can find on my website if you're interested. And please be well. And this week, I want you to look at forgiveness in your life and maybe try that exercise, meditation with the difficult person again, if you found it helpful. Thank you.